Hare Krishna! Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, class number 5. We're on the 5th chapter. We're going to be hearing Narada's questions and Brahma's answers about the nature of the universe, material nature. Exciting? We'll start with some kirtan.
Okay, welcome sweet souls. So happy to gather with you tonight. Thanks for being here even on this gorgeous, gorgeous night. How fortunate we are to get to chant together, to hear together. Let's take a clearing breath first. Inhale, sip the breath in through your nose. Sip, sip, sip. Exhale, let it go. Let's do that 2 more times, just letting the energy of the day start to dissipate so we can be present here together and help to calm our nervous system a little bit. Inhale, sit the breath in, belly expands, fill, fill, fill. Exhale, clear it out. 1 more, inhale, fill, fill, fill. Exhale, clear it out. We start with these opening prayers, honoring all our teachers in a mood of humility and gratitude. Deep breath in. Jnanatmarandasya Jnananjanashakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Nittai Gora Haribo, 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 Nittai Gora Haribo, Nittai Gora Haribo, 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 Nittai Gora Haribo, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki, Shri Shri Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Brahma Bhakti Sangha and beyond ki, Shastra Study Group ki, Gaura Premanande.
Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Great to be with you all. Haribol. Yeah, we had some really nice reflections on chapter 4 of Canto 2. I guess before we jump in, I'll just mention I have a bit of a bruise here, black eye. Did not get into a fight. I was playing soccer and I mishit the soccer ball, so just putting it out there. It doesn't hurt though, so mature body. What are you gonna do? So, yeah, someone said some bad things about Krishna and I had to fight them. No, we don't do that. We give them Krishna's name and we uplift them. So, yeah, let's get some reflections on the fourth, or anything, wherever you're at. If you're anywhere in the second canto, we want to hear your reflections. Amy, I really liked your reflections in the chat. Let's give them a platform.
You started the class talking about truth of the self, and so the question that came up to me is, how I put it in the chat, but something to do with how do we know ourselves beyond our body and our mind, and how, as a human, how do we serve the Lord? If we're not serving the Lord, then what are we doing?
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, we have the prerogative, the privilege of being able to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, ultimately for us as bhakti yogis, then the answer to the question of how do we know ourselves beyond the body and mind is that we receive grace. Because for like the Ashtanga yogis, you know, like there's more of a and the like Gyan yogis, there's more of like a self-directed, independent process of purification and austerity and meditation and so forth that allows them to come to those levels, you know, Brahman or Paramatma. But they're very difficult. They're very time-consuming. They're very difficult, and they're not really like even viable so much in Kali Yuga with their short lifespans and all of our shortcomings. And as Bhakti Yogis is really just like we get help from Krishna. It's like who even am I actually beyond all this? But yeah, like the ability to ask that question is just such a privilege, and I'm glad that you took that away, because that was really like a theme in the chapter. Like this is what it's all about, you know, that urgency.
The other piece was I think I'm not sure how to say this, but Nama. I bow down to Lord Krishna.
Yeah, Namaha. Yeah.
Offer
Right.
my respectful obeisances over and over and over.
Yeah, that was there too. Yeah, nice word. It's the same root as what you find in the word namaste, you know, which really means namaha te, becomes namaste, obeisances to you. It's from a Sanskrit root which means to fold, actually, like to fold the body, to like bow down, like I bow to you, I fold my body down, I lower myself. Yeah, nice.
In that same mood, we were also speaking about humility and how
hearing about Krishna's greatness and all the upper planetary systems can also remind us that, how we're small. I'm small, and that I'm not the center. I'm not the biggest, right? And how do I serve? Like Amy was speaking about how if we're not serving Krishna, the Lord, the Supreme Personality, like what are we doing? What are we connecting it to? And how to experience bhakti is everybody's birthright.
Yeah.
And the qualification is just that sincerity to serve. It's available to all of us.
Jai. Beautiful. Any more reflections?
I have a quick one.
Yeah.
So this weekend, I spent the weekend cleaning out spaces in my house, decluttering. And some of the spaces that I was cleaning out were harder to get rid of because, all right, I admit it, I love shoes. I love shoes. I have lots of shoes. I love shoes. So I decided to put up all these shoes, like declutter my shoe closet and part with some of my babies. And then at the end of the day, at the end of Sunday, I sat down to read, chapter 4 and text 2. The purport came in here and said, attachment for household paraphernalia and for Lord Krishna go poorly together. And I was like, yep, I know. Okay, I'm getting rid of them. But it was just so poignant. Funny, every time you read any of these chapters, any of these purports and verses, they are meaningful at the moment that you're, reading them.
How practical is that? Yeah. Little spring cleaning, little like dispensing of material attachment. Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, that's again big theme of this section. Jai. All right, let's jump into chapter 5. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Chapter 5, the cause of all causes. Sri Narada Muni asked Brahmaji, O chief amongst the demigods, O firstborn living entity, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Please tell me that transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the supersoul. My dear father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? Right? Series of questions here that are going to be answered. What is this? What is the background of this world? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? From the purport, the inquiries by Narada Muni on the basis of factual cause and effect appear very reasonable. The atheists, however, put forward many self-made theories without any touch of cause and effect. The manifested world, as well as the spirit soul, is still unexplained by the godless atheists through the medium of experimental knowledge, although they have put forward many theories manufactured by their fertile brains. Contrary to such mental speculative theories of creation, however, Narada Muni wanted to know all the facts of creation in truth, and not by theories. Verse 3. My dear father, all this is known to you scientifically because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. Amaleka, just like a walnut seed. Amazing. Yeah, because he's effectively like empowered Brahma as a secondary creator, and Narada knows this. So as Prabhupada says, the direct manufacturer of a particular thing is supposed to know how we learned the art of manufacturing, where we got the ingredients, how we set it up, how the products in the manufacturing process are being turned out. Because Brahma is the firstborn living being, naturally he's supposed to know everything about creative functions. Verse 4. My dear father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with your material elements by your personal energy? So in other words, Narada Muni has some sense that perhaps Brahma is the supreme. Right? But at the same time, as Prabhupada points out, it was known to Sri Narada Muni that Lord Brahma attained creative energy by undergoing severe austerities. As such, he could understand that there was someone else superior to Brahmaji who invested Brahma with the power of creation. The scientist has to attain the knowledge of a thing already existing by means of the wonderful brain made by someone else. A scientist can work with the help of such an awarded brain, but it is not possible for the scientist to create his own or a similar brain. Therefore, no one is independent in the matter of creation, in any matter of any creation, nor is such creation automatic. Right? If somebody had to perform austerities for their power, then they're not independent. Right? Verse 5. As the spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so you also yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal, or temporary, is not created from any source other than that of your lordship, thou so great. Purport. The manifested world is full of varieties of created beings, and 8,400,000 species of life, and some of them are superior and inferior to others. In human society, the human being is considered to be the superior living being, and amongst the human beings there are also different varieties, good, bad, equal, etc. But Narada Muni took for granted that none of them has any source of generation besides his father, Brahmaji. Therefore he wanted to know all about them from Lord Brahma. 7. Yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you, when we think of your great austerities and perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. From the purport, following the footsteps of Sri Narada Muni, one should not blindly accept their spiritual master as God himself. A spiritual master is duly respected on a par with God, but a spiritual master claiming to be God himself should at once be rejected. Narada Muni accepted Brahma as the supreme due to Lord Brahma's wonderful acts in creation, but doubts arose in him when he saw that Lord Brahma also worshipped some superior authority. The supreme is supreme, and he has no worshipable superior. 8. My dear Father, you know everything, and you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I have inquired from you be kindly instructed to me, so that I may be able to understand it as your student. 9. Lord Brahma said, My dear boy Narada, being merciful to all, including me, you have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the Almighty Personality of Godhead. Purport. Brahmaji, being so questioned by Naradaji, congratulated him, for it is usual for the devotees to become very enthusiastic whenever they are questioned concerning the Almighty Personality of Godhead. That is a sign of a pure devotee of the Lord. Such discourses on the transcendental activities of the Lord purify the atmosphere in which such discussions are held, and the devotees thus become enlivened while answering such questions. It is purifying both for the questioners and for one who answers the questions. The pure devotees are not only satisfied by knowing everything about the Lord, but are also eager to broadcast the information to others, for they want to see that the glories of the Lord are known to everyone. Thus the devotee feels satisfied when such an opportunity is offered to him. This is the basic principle of missionary activities. 10. Brahma speaking, whatever you have spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. Yeah. From the purport, the frog in the well logic illustrates that a frog residing in the atmosphere and boundary of a well cannot imagine the length and breadth of the gigantic ocean. Such a frog, when informed of the gigantic length and breadth of the ocean, first of all does not believe that there is such an ocean. And if someone assures him that factually there is such a thing, the frog then begins to measure it by imagination, by means of pumping its belly as far as possible. With the result that the tiny abdomen of the frog bursts and the poor frog dies without any experience of the actual ocean. Similarly, the material scientists also want to challenge the inconceivable potency of the Lord by measuring him with their frog-like brains and their scientific achievements, but at the end they simply die unsuccessfully like the frog. Brahma is pointing out that if one doesn't actually have the context of Krishna, the Supreme Person, then it's inevitable that his own activities as Brahma will appear to be divine. There's a science fiction author, maybe Arthur C. Clarke or someone else, who said, or some other like thinker or writer, I can look it up, said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? The idea that the actual nature of someone's power is only understandable the closer you get to their level of power, right? Otherwise, it's just like it may as well be God. So Brahma is basically saying, yeah, well, I'm not, but whatever you're saying about me makes sense, because unless someone is aware of the personality of Godhead, one is sure to be illusioned by what he's doing, what I'm doing here, he says, which is essentially manifesting the universe as a service. Prabhupada continues, sometimes a materially powerful man is accepted as God or the incarnation of God without any knowledge of the factual God. Such a material assessment may be gradually extended, and the attempt may reach to the highest limit of Brahmaji, who is the topmost living being within the universe, and has a duration of life unimaginable to the material scientist. As we get information from the most authentic book of knowledge, the Bhagavad Gita, Brahmaji's one day and night is calculated to be some hundreds of thousands of years on our planet. This long duration of life may not be believed by the quote-unquote frog in the well, but persons who have a realization of the truths mentioned in Bhagavad Gita accept the existence of a great personality who creates the variegatedness of the complete universe. It is understood from the revealed scriptures that the Brahmaji of this universe is younger than all the other Brahmas, in charge of the many, many universes beyond this, but none of them can be equal to the personality of Godhead. Verse 11. I created, after the Lord's creation, by his personal effulgence, known as the Brahma Jyoti. Just as when the sun manifests its fire, the moon, the firmament, the influential planets, and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. Purport. Lord Brahmaji said to Narada that his impression that Brahma was not the supreme authority in the creation was correct. Sometimes less intelligent men have the foolish impression that Brahma is the cause of all causes. As the decision of the state court, the supreme court of a state, is final, similarly, the judgment of Brahmaji, the supreme authority in the universe, is final in the Vedic process of acquiring knowledge. As we've already explained, Naradaji was a liberated soul, therefore he was not one of the less intelligent men who accept a false god or gods in their own ways. He represented himself as less intelligent, and yet intelligently presented a doubt to be cleared by the supreme authority, so that the uninformed might take note of it and be rightly informed about the intricacies of the creation and the Creator. This is description here about how various shastras, various scriptural evidence shows that, quote, Lord Krishna is the background of the Brahma Jyoti, the impersonal effulgence. In the Nirukti or Vedic dictionary, the import of Pratishta is mentioned as, quote, that which establishes. So the Brahma Jyoti is not independent or self-sufficient. Lord Sri Krishna is ultimately the creator of the Brahma Jyoti, mentioned in this verse as Svaroshasha, or the effulgence of the transcendental body of the Lord. This Brahma Jyoti is all-pervading, and all creation is made possible by its power. Therefore, the Vedic hymns declare that everything that exists is being sustained by the Brahma Jyoti. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Therefore, the potent seed of all creation is the Brahma Jyoti, and the same Brahma Jyoti, unlimited and unfathomed, is established by the Lord. Therefore, the Lord, Sri Krishna, is ultimately the supreme cause of all causes. Aham sarvasya prabhava. One should not expect the Lord to create like a blacksmith with a hammer and other instruments. The Lord creates by his potencies. He has his multifarious potencies, parasya shaktir vividhaiva shuryate. Just as a small seed of a banyan tree has the potency to create a big banyan tree, the Lord disseminates all varieties of seeds by his potent Brahma Jyoti, Svarochusha, and the seeds are made to develop by the watering process of persons like Brahma. Brahma cannot create the seeds, but he can manifest the seed into a tree, just as a gardener helps plants and orchards to grow by the watering process. The example cited here of the sun is very appropriate. In the material world, the sun is the cause of all illumination, fire, electricity, the rays of the moon, etc. All luminaries in the sky are creations of the sun. The sun is the creation of the Brahma Jyoti, and the Brahma Jyoti is the effulgence of the Lord. Thus, the ultimate cause of creation is the Lord. 12. I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna, Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of men, to call me the supreme controller. Purport. As will be more clearly explained in the next verse, the illusory potency of the Lord bewilders the less intelligent to accept Brahmaji, or for that matter, any other person as the Supreme Lord. Brahmaji, however, refuses to be called this, and he directly offers his respectful obeisances unto Lord Vasudeva or Sri Krishna, as he's already offered the same obeisances in the Brahma Samhita 5.1. Ishvara Paramah Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Quote, the Supreme Lord is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the primeval Lord in his transcendental body, the ultimate cause of all causes. I worship that primeval Lord Govinda. Brahmaji is conscious of his actual position, and he knows how less intelligent persons, bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord, whimsically accept anyone and everyone as God. A responsible personality like Brahmaji refuses to be addressed as the Supreme Lord by their disciples or subordinates, but foolish persons, praised by men of the nature of dogs, hogs, camels, and asses, feel flattered to be addressed as the Supreme Lord. Why such persons take pleasure in being addressed as God, or why such persons are addressed as God by foolish admirers, is explained in the following verse. 13. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position, but those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of, quote, it is I, and, quote, it is mine. Purport, the invincibly powerful deluding energy of the personality of God, or the third energy, representing nescience, can bewilder the entire world of animation. But still she is not strong enough to be able to stand in front of the Supreme Lord. Nescience is behind the personality of Godhead, where she is powerful enough to mislead the living beings. And the primary symptom of bewildered persons is that they talk nonsense. Nonsensical talks are not supported by the principles of Vedic literature. And first-class nonsense talk is, quote, it is I, quote, it is mine. A godless civilization is exclusively conducted by such false ideas, and such persons, without any factual realization of God, accept a false God or falsely declare themselves to be God to mislead persons who are already bewildered by the deluding energy. Those who are before the Lord, however, and who surrender unto him cannot be influenced by the deluding energy. Therefore they are free from the misconception of it is I, it is mine, and therefore they do not accept a false God or pose themselves as equal to the Supreme Lord. Identification of the bewildered person is distinctly given in this verse. 14. So now, Brahma's going to start answering the questions of, like, what is the background of the world and so forth. The 5 elementary ingredients of creation, the interaction thereof set up by eternal time, and the intuition or nature of the individual living beings are all differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. And in truth, there is no other value in them. Right? The ingredients, the actions, time, and svabhava, intuition or nature of the jiva. From the purport, this phenomenal world is impersonally the representation of Vasudeva because the ingredients of its creation, their interaction, and the enjoyer of the resultant action, the living beings, are all produced by the external and internal energies of Lord Krishna. This is given from the Bhagavad Gita 7:4-5. Right? It's a section that talks about the earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego as separated material energies. And aparayamitastvanyang prakriting vittime param. There's a superior energy, Krishna says in 7.5, that's the living entities. So that's the internal energy and the external energy. That's what comprises the material world. Unconscious matter of different kinds and animate, conscious living entities. But both take their source as Krishna. And Prabhupada says this phenomenal world is impersonally the representation of the Lord. It's like you don't see Krishna's face, but it's his energies manifested in their interactions. The living entity who enjoys the interaction of the above gross and subtle ingredients as set up by eternal time is an offshoot of internal potency with freedom to remain either in the material world or in the spiritual world. In the material world, the living entity is enticed by deluding nescience, but in the spiritual world, they are in the normal condition of spiritual existence without any delusion. The living entity is known as the marginal potency of the Lord, but in all circumstances, neither the material ingredients nor the spiritual parts and parcels are independent of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. For all things, whether products of the external, internal, or marginal potencies of the Lord, are simply displays of the same effulgence of the Lord, just as light, heat, and smoke are displays of fire. None of them is separate from the fire. All of them combine together to be called fire. Similarly, all phenomenal manifestations as well as the effulgence of the body of Vasudeva are his impersonal features, whereas he eternally exists in his transcendental form called Satchidananda Vigraha, distinct from all conceptions of the material ingredients mentioned above. Verse 15. The Vedic literatures are made by and are meant for the Supreme Lord. The demigods are also meant for serving the Lord as parts of his body. The different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and different sacrifices are performed just to please him. Right? This is the advantage of hearing from somebody who's more senior to you. They can put everything in context. Sacrifices, learning, scripture. Brahma understands this because he understands the purpose of the Lord. Purport. According to the Vedanta Sutras, the Supreme Lord is the author of all revealed scriptures, and all revealed scriptures are for knowing the Supreme Lord. Veda means knowledge, and that leads to the Lord. The Vedas are made just to revive the forgotten consciousness of the conditioned souls, and any literature not meant for reviving God consciousness is rejected at once by the Narayana Para devotees. The supreme worshipable deity is Narayana. The demigods are recommended secondarily for worship in relation to Narayana because the demigods are assisting hands in the management of the universal affairs. As the officers of the kingdom are respected due to their relation to the king, the demigods are worshipped due to their relation to the Lord. Without the Lord's relation, worship of the demigods is unauthorized, avitipurvakam. Just as it is improper to water the leaves and branches of a root without watering it is improper to water the leaves and branches of a tree without watering its root. Therefore, the demigods are also dependent on Narayana. The lokas, or different planets, are attractive because they have different varieties of life and bliss, partially representing the Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Everyone wants the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. In the material world, such an eternal life of bliss and knowledge is progressively realized in the upper planets, but after reaching there, one is inclined to achieve further progress along the path back to Godhead. Duration of life with a proportionate quantity of bliss and knowledge may be increased from one planet to another. One can increase the duration of life to thousands and hundreds of thousands of years in different planets, but nowhere is there eternal life. Right? Imagine if an insect could conceive of the experience of a human being living for thousands and thousands of times longer than they do, having a thinking capacity so much more than they have, with an ability to manipulate their environment so much greater, much more developed sense of ego, everything, the ability to enjoy our senses. They would think, oh, well, yeah, I want that. That's God. That's supreme. Because that's their context, right? Some insects, Prabhupada points out, they mate in the beginning of the evening, and in the morning, their whole entire lifespan is done. You find them dead on the ground. One generation gone in 12 hours. But Prabhupada's pointing out, these are all just relative differences according to body, according to loka, according to planet, but nowhere is there eternal life. But one who can reach the highest planet, that of Brahma, can aspire to reach the planets in the spiritual sky, where life is eternal. Therefore, the progressive journey from one planet to another culminates in reaching the supreme planet of the Lord, Madhama, where life is eternal and full of bliss and knowledge. All different kinds of sacrifice are performed just to satisfy Lord Narayana with a view to reach him. And the best sacrifice recommended in this age of Kali is Sankirtan Yagya, the mainstay of the devotional service of the Narayana Para devotee. We're doing that right now. We're hearing and chanting about Krishna. 16. All different types of meditation or mysticism are meant for realizing Narayana. All austerities are aimed at achieving Narayana. Culture of transcendental knowledge is for getting a glimpse of Narayana. And ultimately, salvation is entering the kingdom of Narayana. Purport. In meditation, there are two systems of yoga, Ashtanga Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga is practiced in concentrating the mind, releasing oneself from all engagements by the regulated processes of meditation, concentration, sitting postures, etc. Sankhya Yoga is meant to distinguish the truth from ephemerals, but ultimately both systems are meant for realizing the impersonal Brahman, which is but a partial representation of Narayana, the personality of Godhead. As we've explained before, the impersonal Brahman effulgence is only a part of the personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is situated on the person of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, Brahman is the glorification of the personality of the Godhead. Of the Godhead. This is confirmed both in Bhagavad Gita and the Matsya Purana. Gati refers to the ultimate destination, or the last word in liberation. Oneness with the impersonal Brahmajyoti is not ultimate liberation. Superior to that is a sublime association of the personality of Godhead in one of the innumerable spiritual planets in the Vaikuntha sky. Therefore, the conclusion is that Narayana, or the personality of Godhead, is the ultimate destination for all kinds of yoga systems as well as all kinds of liberation. 17. So here's a comparison. Brahma's going to compare himself to the Lord. Inspired by him only, I discover what is already created by him, Narayana, under his vision as the all-pervading supersoul, and I also am created by him only. Right? He's indicating, I'm just inspired. I'm just doing whatever is already been done by him. Right? The example already given is of the sun as the original luminary, and the other planets and the moon is just reflecting that, right? That there's an original source, and Brahma is doing a very important service, but he's saying, I'm just doing what's already been, I discover what is already created by him, right? Sometimes like proud explorers, I've discovered America, or anything else. It's like, yeah, but it was already there. You didn't make it. You didn't discover, you didn't create the new element you found. You just you get to put your name on it. But Brahma's consciousness is very humble, as is typical of the devotee. Very instructive here. He's like, I discover what is already created by him under his vision. Right, Prabhupada actually uses the Columbus in America example in the purport. Yeah. Similarly, no one can create anything without the sanction of the Lord, since everyone sees according to their ability. This ability is also awarded by the Lord according to one's willingness to render service unto the Lord. One must therefore be voluntarily willing to render service unto the Lord. And thus the Lord will empower the doer in proportion to their surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Lord Brahma is a great devotee of the Lord. Therefore he has been empowered or inspired by the Lord to create such a universe as the one manifested before us. The Lord also inspired Arjuna to fight in the field of Kurukshetra. Beginning from Brahma, the topmost intelligent living entity within the universe, down to the smallest ant, every living entity's intelligence is overseen by the Lord in his transcendental position as the witness of all actions. The subtle presence of the Lord is felt by the intelligent person who can study the psychic effects of thinking, feeling, and willing. We had that a couple of chapters ago. 2:35 or something. There was a nice purport there where Prabhupada goes through a logical progression of how you can conceive that intuition is the proof that there's higher intelligence, right? And so he's saying also here that the subtle presence of the Lord is felt by an intelligent person and a humble person, because Krishna is, as he says in Bhagavad Gita, Upadrishtana Manta. He's the overseer and the permitter. He's the overseer and the permitter. 18. The Supreme Lord is pure spiritual form, transcendental to all material qualities. Yet for the sake of the creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energy the material modes of nature, called goodness, passion, and ignorance. Right? Again, more contrast with Brahma. Brahma is actually living in a body made of matter, but he's contrasting that Krishna is not. He's transcendental. From the purport, that is the difference between the Lord and the living entities. The living entities are subjected by those qualities, although originally the living entities are qualitatively one with the Lord. The Supreme Lord is the controller of the material energy, whereas the living entities who are entangled in the material world are neither masters nor controllers. Rather, they become subordinate to or controlled by such energy. Factually, the Lord is eternally manifested by his internal potency or spiritual energy, just like the sun and its rays in the clear sky. But at times he creates the material energy, as the sun creates a cloud in the clear sky. As the sun is ever increasingly unaffected by a spot of cloud, so also the unlimited Lord is unaffected by the spot of material energy, manifested at times in the unlimited span of the Lord's rays of Brahma Jyoti. Right? Clouds are primarily made by the process of condensation, the sun's rays draw water, and then you get gradual accumulation. They create clouds eventually, right? That's where the clouds are. They're built up water. So in effect, the sun is actually creating clouds, right? So although the sun is gigantic and all powerful, practically speaking, from our tiny, insignificant vantage point, it can get covered. We call that an overcast day. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, where's the sun? It's gone, right? It's covered by the clouds. It's not covered by the clouds. If you rise above the clouds, you'll see it's right there. It's actually just shining the same as it ever was, but we're covered by the clouds. We're conditioned. We're illusioned. We're under that tiny, tiny shadow place where you can't see the sun. But the whole universe is being illuminated by the sun. Just our little problem in our little corner, covered by a cloud. And we think, oh no, there is no God. So this is Prabhupada's, one of his very beautiful analogies, that the sun itself makes the cloud. And then it appears to be covered by it. Similarly, Krishna is the source of all energies, including the diluting energy. And by that, he appears to disappear. Oh, I'm gone. There is no God. But actually, it's just this insignificant energy. 19. These three modes of material nature being further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activities put the eternally transcendental living entity under conditions of cause and effect and make them responsible for such activities. Matter, knowledge, and activities. Purport. Because they are between the internal and external potencies, the eternally transcendental living entities are called the marginal potency of the Lord. Factually, the living entities are not meant to be so conditioned by material energy, but due to their being affected by the false sense of lording it over the material energy, they come under the influence of such potency and thus become conditioned by the three modes of material nature. This external energy of the Lord covers up the pure knowledge of the living entities eternally existing with them, but the covering is so constant that it appears that the conditioned soul is eternally ignorant. Such is the wonderful action of Maya, or external energy, manifested as if materially produced. 20. O Brahmana Narada, the superseer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of the living entities because of the above-mentioned three modes of nature. But he is the controller of everyone, including me. "21. The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities, and their particular nature, for which they were created, and he again merges them independently." Right, so this is the creation of what's called karana. Karana means, how does he translate it in these verses? Cause? Karana means cause. So the Krishna is being explained as the cause of all causes.
So different than karma. You're saying
Yeah,
karma.
karana. Karana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Verse 22. After the incarnation of the first Purusha, Karanana Vishaya Vishnu, the Mahat Tattva, or the principles of material creation, take place, and then time is manifested. And in course of time, the three qualities appear. Nature means the three qualitative appearances. They transform into activities. Purport. By the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord, the whole material creation evolves by the process of transformation and reactions one after another. And by the same omnipotency, they are wound up again one after another and conserved in the body of the Supreme. Kala, or time, is the synonym of nature, and is a transformed manifestation of the principles of material creation. As such, Kala, time, may be taken as the first cause of all creation, and by transformation of nature, different activities of the material world become visible. These activities may be taken up as a natural instinct of each and every living being, or even of the inert objects. And after the manifestation of activities, there are varieties of products and byproducts of the same nature. Originally, these are all due to the Supreme Lord. The Vedanta Sutras and the Bhagavatam thus begin with the absolute truth as the beginning of all creations. Janmadi yasya yataha. Right? We see so many cycles in nature, and so many sub-causes and effects, but it's pointing out that all those things, including their inclinations and karma are just under time, which is itself under Krishna. 23. Material activities are caused by the Mahatattvas being agitated. So Mahatattva is like the conglomeration of the modes of nature before they're fully manifest. We're going to hear about that in these verses. Material activities are caused by the Mahatattvas being agitated. At first, there is transformation of the modes of goodness and passion, and later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, its knowledge, and different activities of material knowledge come into play. Purport. Material creations of every description are more or less due to the development of the mode of passion, rajas. The Mahatattva is the principle of material creation, and when it is agitated by the will of the Supreme, at first the modes of passion and goodness are prominent, and afterwards the mode of passion, being generated in due course by material activities of different varieties, becomes prominent, and the living entities are thus involved more and more in ignorance. Brahma is a representation of the mode of passion, and Vishnu is a representation of the mode of goodness, while the mode of ignorance is represented by Lord Shiva, the father of material activities. Material nature is called the mother, and the initiator for materialistic life is the father, Lord Shiva. All material creation by the living entities is therefore initiated by the mode of passion. Right? This is the activity creation mode. With the advancement of the duration of life in a particular millennium, the different modes act by gradual development. Oh, there's a typo here. What does it say in the next sentence there for you?
What was the last word you said? Age of Kali?
No, but by gradual development.
In the age of Kali, when the mode of passion is most prominent.
Okay. Yeah, there's a typo here. In the age of Kali, when the mode of passion is most prominent, material activities of different varieties in the name of the advancement of human civilization take place, and the living entities become more and more involved in forgetting their real identity by the spiritual nature. By a slight cultivation of the mode of goodness, a glimpse of spiritual nature is perceived. But due to the prominence of the mode of passion, the mode of goodness becomes adulterated. Therefore, one cannot transcend the limits of the material modes, and therefore realization of the Lord, who is always transcendental to the modes of material nature, becomes very difficult for the living entities, even though prominently situated in the mode of goodness through cultivation of the various methods. In other words, the gross matters are adibhutam, their maintenance is adidaivam, and the initiator of material activities is called adhyatmam. In the material world, these three principles act as prominent features, namely as raw material, its regular supplies, and its use in different varieties of material creations for sense enjoyment by the bewildered entities. 24. The self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into three features, becomes known as the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, in three divisions, namely, the powers that evolve matter, knowledge of material creations, and the intelligence that guides such materialistic activities. Not that you are quite competent to understand this. Purport. Materialistic ego, or the sense of identification with matter, is grossly self-centered, devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. And this self-centered egoism of the materialistic living entities is the cause of their being conditioned by the other paraphernalia and continuing their bondage of material existence. Bhagavad Gita, this self-centered egoism is very nicely explained in the 7th chapter, verses 24 through 27. The self-centered impersonalist, without a clear conception of the personality of Godhead, concludes in their own way that the personality of Godhead takes a material shape from his original impersonal spiritual existence for a particular mission. And this misleading conception of the Supreme Lord by the self-centered impersonalist continues, even though he is seen to be very interested in the Vedic literatures such as Brahma Sutras and other highly intellectual sources of knowledge. This ignorance of the personal feature of the Lord is due simply to ignorance of the mixture of different modes. The impersonalist thus cannot conceive of the Lord's eternal spiritual form, of eternal knowledge, bliss, and existence. The reason is that the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non-devotee, even after a thorough study of literature like the Bhagavad Gita, remains an impersonalist simply by obstinacy. This obstinacy is due to the action of Yoga Maya, a personal energy of the Lord that acts like an aide-de-camp. By covering the vision of the obstinate impersonalist, such a bewildered human being is described as muta, or grossly ignorant, because they are unable to understand the transcendental form of the Lord as being unborn and unchangeable.
What is an aide-de-camp?
Assistant.
Assistant.
Yeah, an assistant. Maya is assisting Krishna because it is his will to keep under anyone under bondage that doesn't want to see him. If they want to, yeah, the free will of the living entity has to be honored, and so they're covered. They remain under the cloud. Purport. The Lord, continuing the purport, the Lord, being situated in the heart of every individual living entity, knows very well the tendency of such conditioned souls in terms of past, present, and future, but the bewildered conditioned soul can hardly know him in his eternal form. By the will of the Lord, therefore, the impersonalist, even after knowing the Brahman and Paramatma feature of the Lord, remains ignorant of his eternal personal feature as ever-existent Narayana, transcendental to all material creation. The cause of such gross ignorance is constant engagement by the materialistic man in the matter of artificially increasing material demands. To realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to purify the materialistic senses by devotional service. The mode of goodness, or the Brahminical culture recommended in the Vedic literatures, is helpful to such spiritual realization, and thus the Jnana Shakti stage of the conditioned soul is comparatively better than the other two stages, namely Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti. The whole material civilization is manifested by a huge accumulation of materials, or in other words, raw materials for industrial purposes, and the industrial enterprises, Kriya Shakti, are all due to gross ignorance of spiritual life. Right now, Dravya Shakti means the energy of matter, substance. Kriya Shakti means the energy of activity, so ignorance, passion, and then Jnana Shakti is knowledge. So these differences in the modes of nature. Dull ignorance just like oversees inanimate matter. Passion oversees activities, and goodness oversees knowledge, up to the limit of impersonal knowledge of the Supreme Paramatma Bhagavan, Paramatma Brahman. In order to rectify this great anomaly of materialistic civilization based on the principles of Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti, i.e. ignorance and passion, one has to adopt the process of devotional service of the Lord by adoption of the principles of Karma Yoga. As said in Bhagavatam 9:27, quote, O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. That's devotional service. That's what transcends the mode even of goodness. 25. From the darkness of false ego, the first of the five elements, namely the sky, is generated. Its subtle form is the quality of sound, exactly as the seer is in relationship with the seen. So I think there's a description here of the different aspects of the material nature as manifesting from the false ego. From the purport, the five elements, namely sky, air, fire, water, and earth, are all but different qualities of the darkness of false ego. This means that the false ego in the sum total of Mahatattva is generated from the marginal potency of the Lord. And due to this false ego of lording over the material creation, ingredients are generated for the false enjoyment of the living being. When the bewildered living being desires this, the shadow elements are generated by the will of the Lord, and the living entities are allowed to run after them as after a phantasmagoria. It is said that first the tanmatra sound is created and then the sky, and in this verse it is confirmed that actually it is so, but sound is the subtle form of the sky, and the distinction is like that between the seer and the seen. The sound is a representation of the actual object, as the sound produced speaking of the object gives an idea of the description of the object. Therefore, sound is the subtle characteristic of the object. This is a bit technical here, 26 through 29. Because the sky is transformed, the air is generated with the quality of touch. And by previous succession, the air is also full of sound, right? And the basic principles of duration of life, sense perception, mental power, and bodily strength. When the air is transformed in the course of time and nature's course, fire is generated, taking shape with a sense of touch and sound. Since fire is also transformed, there is a manifestation of water, full of juice and taste. As previously, it also has form and touch and is also full of sound. And water, being transformed from all variegatedness on earth, appears odorous, and as previously becomes qualitatively full of juice, touch, sound, and form respectively. So, I'll go over that. As Prabhupada says, the whole process of creation is an act of gradual evolution and development from one element to another, reaching up to the variegatedness of the earth, as so many trees, plants, mountains, rivers, reptiles, birds, animals, and varieties of human beings. So, as the universe is being manifested, the different categories of material existence are manifesting from each other, right? Like those little nested Russian dolls, one out of the other, out of the other, out of the other. But they're all coming from false ego. So first is the most subtle, which is ether or sky, the capacity for space, even without anything in it. Because the capacity for space is a material element. I'll call this ka, or ether, and that's associated with sound. And the capacity for hearing. From that, slightly more gross, we're getting more and more gross at every step, is air. Air manifests the capacity for touch, right? As soon as something is occupying space, there's the capacity to feel something. So you have hearing, then you have touch. Then you have fire, light, right? From fire, coincidental with fire is vision, the ability to see. You can't see without light. So then from fire you have water. And water is taste. If there's no moisture, you can't taste anything. Then you have earth, the most gross of all elements, includes smell. And every element includes all the qualities of the ones before it, right? So within water, you have fire, and so on and so forth. Earth has all of them, and all of the objects of the senses. So all the potential for experiencing the material objects is manifested in stages. That's what this section is talking about, right? Quite technical. The quality of sense perception is also evolutionary, namely generated from sound, then touch, and from touch to form. Taste and odor are also generated, along with the gradual development of sky, air, fire, water, and earth. They are all mutually the cause and effect of one another, but the original cause is the Lord himself in plenary portion, as Mahavishnu lying in the causal water of the Mahatattva. As such, Lord Krishna is described in the Brahma Samhita as the cause of all causes, right? So, Prabhupada mentioned earlier Sankhya Yoga, right? He's mentioned there's two kinds of yoga, Ashtanga Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. So Ashtanga Yoga is like regulating your senses and practicing your postures and controlling the life airs and so forth. Sankhya Yoga is more of a mental process. It involves, Sankhya means to count, to enumerate. So Sankhya Yogi generally engages in Gyan to differentiate the different categories of reality. So this is part of what this section is a kind of Sankhya. It's enumerating what is matter. And we can see the soul is not any of these categories, neither is the super soul or Krishna. So this is a kind of Sankhya Yoga with a goal of actually realizing what the original cause is, right? Because we can say, like, there are sub-causes, right? Fire comes from air or whatever, but they all come from the Mahatattva. And the Mahatattva is manifested as the external energy of Krishna under his time energy. So this is a kind of Sankhya Yoga, study of categories. Right, so in the second paragraph of this purport, Prabhupada goes over exactly what I just talked about. Probably should have just read that. But therefore on the earth there is a full display of variegatedness of life, which is originally started with the basic principles of air. Diseases of the body take place due to derangement of air within the earthly body of the living beings. Mental diseases result from a special derangement of the air within the body. And as such, yogic exercise is especially beneficial to keep the air in order, so that diseases of the body become almost nailed by such exercises. This is why great yogis have such, great, terrific health, mastery. A perfect yogi can have command over death and quit the body at the right moment, when they are competent to transfer themselves to a suitable planet. The bhakti yogi, however, surpasses all the yogis, because by dint of their devotional service, they are promoted to the region beyond the material sky, and placed in one of the planets in the spiritual sky by the supreme will of the Lord. Okay. Verse 30. From the mode of goodness, the mind is generated and becomes manifest, as also the 10 demigods controlling the bodily movements. Such demigods are known as the controller of directions, the controller of air, the sun god, the father of Daksha Prajapati, the Ashwini Kumaras, the fire god, the king of heaven, the worshipable deity in heaven, the chief of the Adityas, and Brahmaji, the Prajapati, all come into existence. Right. Very interesting that the mind is manifested from goodness.
Mm.
The mind is originally in goodness. 31. By further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. Purport. The living condition of material existence depends more or less on one's intelligence and powerful living energy. Intelligence to counteract the hard struggle for existence is assisted by the senses for acquiring knowledge. And the living energy maintains it himself by manipulating. The living energy, that's a living entity. Yeah, maintains himself by manipulating the active organs like the hands and legs. But on the whole, the struggle for existence is an exertion of the mode of passion. Therefore, all the sense organs, headed by intelligence and living energy, prana, or life air, are different products and byproducts of the second mode of nature called passion. This mode of passion, however, is a product of the element air element, as described before. Mind comes from goodness, intelligence and the senses come from passion. 32. O Narada, best of the transcendentalists, the forms of the body cannot take place as long as these created parts, namely the elements, senses, mind, and modes of nature, are not assembled. Interesting. Purport. The different types of bodily construction of living entities are exactly like different types of motor cars manufactured by assembling the allied motor parts. When the car is ready, the driver sits in the car and moves it as he desires. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1861. The living entity is as if seated on the machine of the body, and the car of the body is moving by the control of material nature, just as the railway trains are moving under the direction of the controller. The living entities, however, are not the bodies. They are separate from the cars of the bodies. These parts of the body, such as the senses, are the creation of the Mahatattva, and when they are assembled by the will of the Lord, the material body comes into existence, and the living entity is allowed to use it for further activities. This is explained as follows. 33. Thus, when all these become assembled by force of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this universe certainly came into being by accepting both the primary and secondary causes of creation. These are quite technical sections. Yeah.
Maybe it's getting to it, or maybe I missed it, but it talks about what comes from sattva, what comes from rajas, but is there something that comes from tamas then?
The objects of the senses.
The objects.
You might get there.
Okay.
Yeah. The ability to manipulate and differentiate between the objects of the senses, i.e. the senses themselves, is in rajas.
Yeah.
But the objects of the senses, dull, earth, water, fire, air, those things are just manifested by ignorance.
Okay.
I'm 99% sure.
Okay.
But we should get to that in this chapter or another. 34. Thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings entering in each of them caused them to be fully animated. 35. The Lord Mahavishnu, although lying in the causal ocean, came out of it, and dividing himself as Hiranyagarbha, he entered into each universe and assumed the Virat Rupa, that's the universal form, with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc. 36. Great philosophers imagined that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the Great philosophers imagine that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the different upper and lower limbs of the universal body of the Lord. Purport. The word kalpayanti, or imagine, is significant. The Virat universal form of the Absolute is an imagination of the speculative philosophers who are unable to adjust to the eternal two-handed form of Lord Sri Krishna. Although the universal form as imagined by the great philosophers is one of the features of the Lord, it is more or less imaginary. It is said that the 7 upper planetary systems are situated above the waist of the universal form, whereas the lower planetary systems are situated below his waist. The idea impressed herein is that the Supreme Lord is conscious of every part of his body, and nowhere in the creation is there anything beyond his control. Remember, early in this canto, there's a description of the beginning transcendentalist will meditate on the Lord in the form of the universe, visible to their senses, and that's the beginning of God realization. That whole chapter is actually called the first step in God realization. That's what Prabhupada's talking about here. It's kalpayanti, it's a kind of imagination, but it's a way of starting to approach the personal feature, because we have consciousness of all different parts of our body. If we imagine the universe as a gigantic body, it's like that's the Lord, right? 37. The Brahmanas represent his mouth, the Kshatriyas his arms, the Vaishyas his thighs, and the Shudras are born of his legs. Right, so Prabhupada points out in the purport, all of them are necessary and all of them are part of the Lord, but of them the Brahmanas are more crucial, right? Like if you're attacked, Prabhupada might actually directly say this in the purport, but if you're attacked, you cover your head with whatever you have available because that's the critical executive function, right? That can protect you. Everything else is servant to that. But in the overall scheme of things, everything is part of the body of the Lord. So although one may be in a more menial and one may be more like a more overseeing position, that's just all relative. Everything is in relationship to serving together for the Lord's pleasure. Oh, low on battery. Can you get me my charger? Better is that little charger that's plugged into the wall. You'll see the new one I got. We're on verse 38. Yeah. The lower planetary systems up to the limit of the earthly stratum are said to be situated in his legs. The middle planetary systems, beginning from Bhuvarloka, are situated in his navel, and the still higher planetary systems, occupied by the demigods and highly cultured sages and saints, are situated in the chest of the Supreme Lord. Right. Purport: there are 14 spheres of planetary systems within this universe. The lower systems are called Bhurloka, middle systems are called Bhuvarloka, and the higher planetary systems up to Brahmaloka are called Svarloka. All of them are situated on the body of the Lord. In other words, no one within this universe is without a relationship with the Lord. That'll be here, actually. There. So, yeah, the 14 are subdivided into 3. Here. I forget if it's 5, 4, 5, or but the point is, yeah, these are just more subdivisions of the universe. 39. From the forefront of the chest up to the neck of the universal form of the Lord are situated the planetary systems named Janaloka and Tapoloka, whereas Satyaloka, the topmost planetary system, is situated on the head of the form. The spiritual planets, however, are eternal. These are the higher planets, the Svarloka. Brahmaloka Sanatana. That this verse is saying that, however, well, I think Prabhupada's going to speak to it. He says here, many times in these pages we've discussed the spiritual planets situated beyond the material sky, and the description is corroborated in this verse. The word Sanatana is significant. I mean, Sanatana means eternal. The Lord is all spirit, and his name, fame, glories, pastimes, qualities, etc. are all non-different from him because he's absolute. As such, the planets in the kingdom of God are also non-different from him. In those planets, there is no difference between the body and the soul, nor is any influence of time as we experience in the material world. And in addition to there being no influence of time, the planets in Brahmaloka, due to being spiritual, are never annihilated. All variegatedness in the spiritual planets is also one with the Lord. This material world is only a shadow, phantasmagoria of the spiritual kingdom of the Lord, and because it is a shadow, it is never eternal. The variegatedness in the material world of duality, spirit and matter, cannot be compared to that of the spiritual world. Verse 40 and 41. My dear son Narada, know from me that there are 7 lower planetary systems out of the total 14. The first planetary system, known as Attala, is situated on the waist. The second, Vitala, is situated on the thighs. The third, Sutala, on the knees. The fourth, Talatala, on the shanks. The fifth, Mahatala, on the ankles. The sixth, Rasatala, on the upper portion of the feet. And the seventh, Patala, on the soles of the feet. Thus the Virat form of the Lord is full of all planetary systems. 7 going downwards. So if you want more detail on the different planetary systems, you can read these sections. They're also mentioned in other parts of Bhagavatam. 42. Others may divide the whole planetary system into three divisions, namely the lower planetary system on the legs up to the Earth, the middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems Svarloka from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality. Purport. The three divisions of the complete planetary systems are here mentioned. 14 are imagined by others, and that is also explained. So, in other words, you can subdivide them as you like. We're seventh from the bottom, I think. We're right in the middle. That's that's there. You are here. That you are here spot in the map. That's kind of what this chapter is in a lot of ways. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled "The Cause of All Causes." Jai.
Jai.
All right. Cool. What did you hear? What reflections?
It's interesting. The frog in the well. Where was that in the beginning?
Yeah.
Text 10. I mean, it kind of describes us, and then it goes into how all of these different universes and planets are all part of Krishna. And who are we to say that that's not exactly what it is? Like we're frogs in a well. We only know the little world that we're in. Who knows? We could be, situated somewhere on some gigantic body elsewhere. We just don't know. We are frogs in the well. So that's kind
Yeah. 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 In the 5th canto of Bhagavatam, there's a more elaborate description of the universe. It's described again in Canto 3, but in Canto 5, it's very elaborate and it's from a different point of view. It's almost abstract. It doesn't really make sense. Our best minds, their theories are that it has to do with describing the universe from the point of view of the demigods. But the point is, however you slice and dice it, Shukadeva Goswami, when he was asked to describe in that section, he starts by saying, okay, I'll describe as well as I can, but even the greatest devotees only have partial knowledge. And that's Shukadeva Goswami saying that. So even just the universe itself is full of mysteries. It's not something that we can just wrap our head around. But the main point is that Krishna is the cause of all causes. And beyond that, if one is interested in the technicalities of what comes from what order, and where, and when, and how, Bhagavatam is actually an amazing resource. There's also other astronomical texts like the Surya Siddhanta Sanskrit text. I mean, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta was very famous as an astronomer, astrologer, before he became a great preacher. He was like, he had the definitive Bengali translation of the Surya Siddhanta. That's where he got the name. The honorific Saraswati, Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, because Saraswati is the goddess of wisdom, learning. He was so brilliant that he was given that epithet. So some devotees in our line have focused on that, but it's secondary knowledge. But yeah, the main point is that even Shukadeva is like, I'll just tell you what I know, but it's not everything. It's so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm reminded of Arjuna's amazement upon witnessing the universal form. He's like gaping. And then he's like, okay, but I just want to see you as sweet Krishna again. Yeah, any more reflections or questions?
Hi, Haribol.
Hi, Haribol.
Two things. I also went back, like in verse 3, talking about the past, the present, and the future, and everything within the universe is within your grip, just like a walnut. And it struck me because I have a huge walnut tree on our property that I have a love-hate relationship with, mostly kind of more, I don't like it. And it's just like, oh, that jumped out at me like, oh, I can look at this in a whole lot of different ways. It's like there's so much to offer. Just even like I can now, when I'm picking up the thousands of walnuts that fall from this thing, I can think about this verse that it's just within my grip, past, present, future, like a walnut. I don't know if you have anything else maybe to add to that.
Yeah. That was that's nice. That's a nice kind of like thought experiment and connection. Yeah, the context there was Narada was saying, "Please answer these questions because you actually are so expert and in control." Right, from the point of view of somebody who's dependent in an inferior position, the superior is, it is like they have, how's the song go? He has got the whole world in his hands, right? Um, and so Narada is saying like, I'm entrusting you with these questions because you're so empowered or powerful, and so there's a certain beauty in that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Narada didn't have to be qualified as a secondary creator to answer the questions. All he had to do was go to the source and ask him. Okay, so you're doing this job of creating the universe. How does it all work, right? Um, so yeah, I think like I guess since you asked me to add, like I'm just reflecting on how the material tendencies to try to be the boss and figure everything out for yourself, which means reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. But the devotee, or even just a wise person who wants to save time, is like, okay, like who's the expert, right? Can I kind of phone a friend? Like who actually knows this? Who's got this thing? Who's got it wrapped? Like who's got their hand wrapped around it? That's who I'll ask. That's what I want. I want a line to that person. Even if it's not Krishna, like just someone empowered person. Who's my who gave the TED talk? Who's the expert? Right? And that's what Narada does. He doesn't sit around trying to figure it out. He doesn't go to school and come up with some creative theory. He's like, yeah, Brahma, you're it. Help me out. Um, and there's a beauty in that, and it's such a time saver too. Jai.
Thank you. Jai.
Thank you. Okay. Anything
Just
from her?
blows
Yeah.
my mind how the philosophy and just like under how it's possible to begin to try to understand, like zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, and everything is like a part of Krishna, and like when it's laid out in this way of like which part of his body is where and which planet,
Right.
it's like almost like cannot compute, right? And why not, right? And that there's this spiritual science to explain every single aspect of our material existence is really incredible. And I really appreciated, because I think about the gunas often and teach about the gunas, and I so often think about them in relation to like time of day and what consciousness I'm in based on the environments and the people and the food that I'm eating. But it was really fascinating tonight to talk about, and I appreciated the way that you delineated it and explained it around how the mind comes from sattva, the intelligence, the senses come, like, so just like also what makes up the material, the human form,
Yeah, the substance.
the substance
Yeah, are the modes.
is part of the modes as well. It was just I really appreciated that and thinking about the gunas in that way as well. It's like, yeah, we're not going to rid ourselves of them by a material.
Impossible.
By changing the environment we're in. Like, it's impossible. And we can only transcend them through devotional service.
Yeah, I also often think about, every time I read this section, I think about how the mind comes from goodness.
Yeah.
Because it's such a chaotic element. But if you think about it, what does that mean? It means that chaos is due to the influence of the two lower modes. And the purified mind is actually like clear water.
Mm-hmm.
Clear water, undisturbed, no mud, you can see right through it. That's the mind. It's just like peaceful. That's why the great yogis or anybody in the mode of goodness, like their mind is like clear water. Because that's closer to the natural state. It's all that rajas and tamas that makes it like turbulent, restless, like the wind, like a demon monkey. That's all rajas and tamas.
Mm-hmm.
So I always think that's really cool.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for class.
Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll pause here. Let's please keep it going. We always love these reflections in the chat. YouTube crowd, we love you. Please reflect in the YouTube comment section. Anything you heard in this 5th chapter, the cause of all causes. We're halfway through the 2nd canto. Amazing.
Really?
Yeah. Well, by chapter.
Oh, okay.
Some like chapter 7 and chapter 9 will take a little longer.
Yeah.
They're more hefty. But yeah, join us again next week, Krishna willing. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Narada Muni ki jai, Sri Brahmaji ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thanks, everyone.